What's up, friend? Hector here from StrongestTech.com with this week's Technique of the Week. Today we're going to be going into a whole new series, and we're going to be breaking up the Getup, how to improve your Getup over the next 3 weeks or so. One thing we're going to be focusing on is that initial, that first movement. So the Getup has 7 postures, and if you've been around the movement world or kettlebell world, the Getup, you're like no stranger to the Getup. It's become a very popular exercise for good reason. There's a lot of things going on. You've got rolling, you've got reaching, you've got lunging, you've got all kinds of really good things that are happening in the Getup. But essentially, the Getup breaks up into 7 postures, but I like to take those 7 postures and I break them up into like 4 phases. So I take 7 postures and break them up into 4 phases, and I'm going to kind of take you through some of those phases over the course of this series. So the most common part of the Getup that I see people struggle with is that coming up to the elbow. And a lot of times they make a mistake of actually doing like a crunch or almost like a sit-up from the elbow, and that starts to usually happen because their initial setup is not quite correct, I guess. And so I'm just going to kind of run through that today, show you how to work on that shoulder position and how to basically set up in the right position. And I'm not sure where I learned this. It's been years. I actually want to say I learned this from one of my students or someone at one of our Strong First certifications, but I thought it was genius. And what I liked about it is that it helps start in the same position over and over, so it's repeatable every time you do a Getup. So let's get right into it. So you're going to start on your back. Okay, we're going to do a body weight, obviously. So one of the first things is you'll start in this anatomical position. Okay, legs are out 45 degrees, arms are going to be out 45 degrees. So you're in this anatomical position, just like so. You're going to bring one foot up, okay, and then you're going to have your imaginary hand up here as if you're, not imaginary hand because my hand's right here, imaginary kettlebell working side. So imagine that you have a kettlebell in this hand, okay? Fist is lined up over the elbow, elbow, shoulder. We have perfect alignment here, okay? Now the next thing that we're going to do is this hand that's out here. This is where I notice where people start to go wrong, is sometimes they put the arm too far out, sometimes it's too close, and like I said, I'm not sure where I saw this. It was either from one of my students or if it was at a Strong First certification of one of the attendees. But I saw them doing it over and over, and I thought it was absolutely ingenious. So literally all we're going to do here to make sure that the hand is in the right position, the elbow actually is in the right position, is right before we get ready to roll to the elbow, you're going to bring your non-working hand. So the working hand is the hand that has the kettlebell. The non-working hand is the hand that's unloaded on the ground. Okay. So from here, you're going to take this hand and you're just going to bring your hand to your hip, just like this. Okay. Once you bring your hand to your hip, you're just going to open your hand out. Hand to the hip, open the hand out. Okay, now this arm should be more or less 45 degrees and parallel to this leg. Okay, so from here, this is where I normally see people start to go wrong, because this arm's out of position. And so what will happen is, the moment they try to come up, they try to crunch and like sit up like this. So not only are we using too much strength to roll, to come up, but the shoulder is the first thing to go. So I'm going to see if I can demonstrate this here. The moment that they try to do that first movement to the elbow is, as soon as I move, this shoulder hikes up towards my ear. You see that? This shoulder comes up. So the moment I come up, this shoulder comes up to my ear and then up. So it's kind of like this, like crunch, shrug, and up, okay? I believe it was a master kettlebell instructor, Jeff O'Connor, that said, the closer the ear gets to the shoulder, the weaker the shoulder becomes. Or he said it was that your ears or shoulder poison, okay? We want that shoulder as far away from our ear as possible. Okay, so the closer that the shoulder gets to the ear, the weaker the shoulder is. I want to actively push the ground away from me and get as tall as I can, right? So we're not hanging out at the beach. We want to push the floor away. Okay, that's step one. Now, this initial movement to the elbow is actually a roll, just like a child learns how to roll from their back to their belly and their belly to their back. It's actually a roll. Okay, so you're going to use this down foot and you're going to push through the ground. Okay, so we're going to break this up into the first phase of the get up. I'm going to drive through this foot, this leg stays long, and I'm actively pushing, like there's a wall here, and I'm pushing the floor away or the wall away from me. Okay, from here I'm going to drive through this foot and I'm going to roll to my elbow, but I'm going to stack my shoulders here. So you see how I roll here. Okay, once I roll there, I roll, punch. Okay, again, roll, punch. And you see how there should be a straight line from this shoulder that's connected. I'm not shrugging up, this shoulder's connected. A straight line here to my hand. Okay, back down, hand on the hip check. Here, roll, back down, roll. Okay, so I'm initiating that roll with my leg. The next thing that we're going to do is, as I begin to roll to my elbow, I'm going to drive that elbow into the ground. And I heard master instructor Phil Scarito describe this first piece, and this is how I like to think of it now, is kind of like you're pulling a bow, like a bow and arrow, kind of like how you pull a bow and arrow like this. So as I do that initial roll, I imagine I'm pulling a bow and arrow like this. Okay, so hand here, okay, imaginary kettlebell. The moment that I start to roll, I'm going to drive this elbow into the ground and I'm going to pull that bow and arrow here. Okay, then on the way down, I don't want to collapse into my shoulder. I'm going to actively push. I'm going to actively push away and come back to my shoulder. So it's a roll on the way up and it's a roll on the way down. So I'm going to roll on the way up and I'm going to push and I'm going to roll back to my underpit and then roll back to my back. Okay, here we go. Hand on the hip check. Roll, pull the bow and arrow. And sometimes what I'll even do is have this, once I have this elbow in the right position, I'll bring my hand up just like this. Maybe I'll even make a fist. That way as I begin to hit this roll, right as I'm rolling, here's my bow and arrow. Okay? Here, start to roll, bow and arrow. Then, hand on the ground, push. I'm pushing the ground away, push back to my underpit. See, underpit hits first, roll back to my back. Hand up, check, bow and arrow as I roll. So roll first, bow and arrow. Here's my roll, bow and arrow, boom. So it's that initial roll. So you see how I'm rolling up, I'm not crunching and giving up my shoulder. That's one of the most important pieces. And that's where I see a lot of people fail in that part of the get up, that first phase of the get up. And that's that initial roll to the elbow and not so much a crunch, give up the shoulder to the elbow. Okay, so just to recap. Okay, anatomical position, hands out to the side, bring the foot up, imaginary kettlebell, hip check. All right, so all systems are go here now. All right, hand comes out to the side, but I like to keep my hand up just like this, like I'm getting ready to pull that bow and arrow. The moment I initiate that roll, I pull the bow and arrow. Okay, this leg stays stiff. This leg, after I'm done driving, recorrects and I open this leg back up, because then from there you'll start to progress through the other movements of the get up. But right now we're just going to work on that roll and coming back down. Open my hand on the ground. I'm going to actively push myself away and roll back. Bow and arrow. Up. Up. Pretty simple, right? So that's it for this week's technique of the week. We're going to be breaking down a couple of different phases of the get up, and yeah, we're going to be breaking down different phases of the get up. Hopefully that's going to help you to improve your positioning, improve your setup, because at the end of the day, the better your posture is, the stronger you get in that posture, the better position that you're going to be in, and ultimately you're going to gain more leverage over the kettlebell, and it's going to make your get-ups more efficient. So that's all I got. If you have any questions or you have any comments, leave something in the comment section below. Again, I'm Hector with StrongAsHeck.com with this week's Technique of the Week.